Good morning, everybody. My name is Nancy Dutchick, and I'm the president of the Hamden Regional Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for attending our virtual mayor debate with Democratic candidate Lauren Garrett and Republican candidate Ron Gambardella. Thank you both for participating, and we look forward to hearing from you on the many important topics facing our town and our community. I'd like to thank Joe McDonough, Chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee, as well as all the members of our Governmental Affairs Committee who have organized several events for the community so you can get to know who will be representing you and to make an informed decision. Our next event will be a roundtable forum for at-large candidates for Hamden Legislative Council on Thursday, October 21st at Thornton Wilder Auditorium at the Miller Memorial Library at 7 p.m. It will also be held on Facebook Live. Thank you to Whitney Center for being our host site this morning for our many debates throughout many of the years that we've been able to host them here. So we greatly appreciate their time and their commitment and dedication to our community and to our chamber. I'd like to introduce you to Mike Rambrose, President and CEO, to make a few remarks from Whitney Center. Mike.
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our candidates. We are so pleased to once again host this event. Whitney Center, for those of you who don't know, has been here in Hamden since 1979. So we're 42 years old. We represent about 400 seniors, most of whom live here on the campus in independent housing, in assisted living, memory support, or skilled nursing. And we have a number of households out in the broader community, and we service those folks in their homes as well. We also have about 300 staff that we employ, and we work with all those families. And so we, on a daily basis, we're looking about 700 to 1,000 folks that we're engaging with, and so we have a keen interest in the political environment and the legislative environment here in Hamden, because we are inextricably tied to the community, and we look to even expand our relationship with community organizations in the coming year as we think more about issues like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And sort of the social narrative that we've been engaged in over the past couple of years. So I'm very interested in what our candidates have to offer us today, and I welcome you, and I thank the Chamber. I thank Nancy for the continued opportunity to partner and make these things happen. So welcome and enjoy the time today. Thank you.
All righty, so we have a lot of questions, so let's get started. We also welcome any questions from the Facebook community. So we have members of our governmental affairs team monitoring the Facebook chat area. So if you do have a question, please feel free to put that in there, and if time allows, we'll be able to make sure that we get those questions addressed. I'd now like to introduce you to our moderator this morning, Steve Ciardello. Attorney Stephen Ciardello has been practicing attorney since 1983 and founded the general practice law firm which bears his name and is located at 2840 Whitney Avenue in the Mount Carmel section of Hamden. Steve's law firm specializes in residential and commercial real estate transactions, business transactions, and litigations. He's also a principal in the Eli's Restaurant Group, which operates many restaurants here in Hamden and others in Branford, Orange, Milford, and Manchester. Steve has moderated the debates for the Hamden Regional Chamber of Commerce for over 25 years and has been a strong chamber supporter and a member since 1986. We greatly appreciate his time and his dedication to the chamber and to his community. Thank you, Steve, for all you do for us, and everyone enjoy the debate.
Thank you, Nancy. Well, welcome to the Hamden Regional Chamber of Commerce's 2021 mayoral debate between Democrat Lauren Garrett and Republican Ron Gambardella. For those of you who have been part of our debates in the past, we have essentially the same format with the added technology of going out live to you over the electronic airwaves. The format is the same as we've used in the past. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make an opening statement. I'll then begin the debate posing questions alternatively to the two candidates. The first candidate to answer each question will have 90 seconds to respond. The opponent will have 60 seconds to reply, and then the first candidate will be allowed a 30-second rebuttal if they choose. At the end of the debate, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make a closing statement. We have prepared questions, but if time permits, we will take questions from the audience. So let's get started. Thanks to a towing course earlier, Lauren Garrett will begin. Ms. Garrett, your opening statement.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the Whitney Center for hosting us, and thank you to the Chamber for this opportunity to debate. I've lived in Hamden for almost 20 years. I came here for the rich diversity and the natural beauty of this town and chose to raise my family here. I have 3 kids in Hamden Public Schools. 2 of them are over at the high school taking the PSAT this morning, so good luck to the students. And I have a 4th grader. I manage the finances for a small real estate investment business. My business has grown, and we've paid off debt, managed some renovations, all things that we need to do in Hamden, but on a much larger scale. I have served on the Legislative Council. I was the chair of the Education Committee. I served on the Finance and Audit Committee. And over the last several years, I have waged a financial education campaign so that residents can understand the financial challenges that we face and the solutions to our problems. We need to stabilize our finances, but in doing so, we need to protect people. We have to get our finances in order and make sure our values are important to us and are kept whole. So I'm looking forward to this lively debate where hopefully we can talk about infrastructure and economic development and our finances and how we can make sure that we're protecting people while doing all of this. Thank you very much.
I'm Ron Gambardella, running for mayor for the town of Hamden. I lived in Hamden since 1984. I'm well-versed in the issues that Hamden faces, and I have the qualifications to help guide the town through more prosperous times. I have an undergraduate degree in economics and accounting. I have a master's in finance. I served on the Legislative Council for 4 years. I was the vice chair of the Finance Committee. I was a member of the Audit Committee. In my own practice, I am an accountant for 18 companies who rely on me for my financial expertise to guide them through the many challenges that small businesses face. If I could bring my financial expertise to the town of Hamden, I think I can steer the town in a better direction, bring prosperity and stability to our finances. You know, there is a myriad of issues facing Hamden, and crime being one of them. If we're looking to bring economic development into Hamden, we need to address the crime issue. They're part and parcel to one another. They're intricately linked together. Businesses would be reluctant to establish Hamden as their home base if they don't feel safe. How many times have I heard residents say to me on the campaign trail that their number one concern is violence and crime? Just today in the New Haven Register, if you read it, you'll see an article at TGI Fridays where there is an incident requiring police intervention. So this is, I mean, if you go shopping, I've heard many times that people want to shop elsewhere because they don't feel safe to shop in Hamden. We need to address that, and I have a plan to do that. I'm sure there'll be a number of questions. I'll be able to answer that and go into more detail as the questions unfold. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question is for Mr. Gambardella. Hamden has one of the highest mill rates in Connecticut. What specific ideas do you have? For example, how would you cut expenses and increase revenue to lower the residents' taxes?
Okay, so what we have here is a situation where labor really is the number one key item in the budget. Now, how do you deal with that? Well, a number of contracts will be up for negotiation. I think part of what the negotiations need to relay to the people who are affected by this is the town's serious financial condition. We're at $1.3 billion in long-term obligations. We have the highest debt per capita according to the New Haven Register. So we're in a very serious situation. What I would be looking for is to preserve the dignity and respect of each employee in the town, but I also need some flexibility in how we do work. So I expect to bring in a operational audit and look at best practices in other municipalities and convince labor that there are other approaches to how we conduct business in the town of Hamden. Overall, we need to look at the budgeting process as well. I will bring zero budgeting process technique into the mix, which simply means that we start with building a budget, not assuming that last year's actuals are what you're going to expect this year plus 10%. No, it won't work that way. You'll work from building up with your labor force and then what it's required to support the labor force. So we'll bring a number of techniques that haven't been tried in the past, and we will be implementing them going forward. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, your response.
Thank you. So increasing our revenue is something that we definitely need to look at. And one of the ways that we can do that is something that the state has allowed us to do through the cannabis legislation. That's revenue to our town if we have cannabis sold in Hamden. So I'm looking forward to that and economic development that would surround our cannabis retail. We need to have art in these economic development centers so that we can draw people in. Economic development is really the revenue that is going to pull us out of the debt that we have. In decreasing our expenses, we have a lot of contracts for service. An example of that is our medical. That contract has not gone out to bid in decades because of political connections. So we need to send these contracts out to bid, have a competitive bid process so that we can reduce our expenses. And really, these are ways that we can reduce expenses without hurting people. I hear zero-based budgeting, and that scares me in terms of some of our smaller departments, like elderly services. You can't cut into that because that means that we're denying services to our seniors who have worked very hard.
Mr. Gambardella, a response?
Yes, zero-based budgeting has nothing to do with what you just heard. It simply means start with zero and add what your requirements are so that we come up with a clean, clear view of each department. In addition to that, you probably all got your property declarations if you're in small business. What I would propose is that we offer a 50% reduction in the first year placement of assets as an incentive to bring businesses here into Hamden as well as improve properties in Hamden. I think if we do that, if we think innovatively, trying to provide incentives for why people should establish businesses in Hamden, we'd be far better off. In our close proximity to Route 15 and I-91 connector, we have great opportunities to develop Hamden's economic base.
Thank you. To facilitate better transmission out through Facebook, if we could have the candidates move the microphones even closer to where they are and then speak directly in them, especially Mr. Gambardella. Yours is a little farther away so that they can pick up the audio better.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, the next question we lead off, it's for Ms. Garrett's response. During the next 2 years, many of the town's union contracts will be up for renewal. What specifically would you offer in those negotiations that would save the town money while respecting its employees?
Thank you for that question. We have a lot of town employees who are in our union and many different unions, which makes it very difficult because all of those unions kind of look at each other so that they're making sure that they're getting the same deal everybody else is getting. And really, that's the fair way to go. But it usually revolves around the police union contract. And there are a lot of ways that we need to rein in some of those costs. So patrol officers are required to be on the road for the majority of their shift. Now, on the road means in a police car and not doing any kind of walking around, community policing. So I want to make sure that we take some of those hours out of the patrol cars. This is just gas that's being used and reducing our ability to community police. In addition to that, we've got a lot of vacation days and overtime expenses that is produced because if if we have somebody who goes on vacation and somebody calls in sick, we've got to fulfill those hours. So we need to have ways where we're reducing our overtime, and I think that we can do this for a lot of our unions.
Thank you. Mr. Gambardella?
Yeah, speaking on the overtime, especially with regard to police, they are working quite a bit of overtime, and it's really unhealthy. What I would like to do is to discuss with the police union in particular, and other unions generally, is that right now, if they could consider a reduction of 25 or 50% in overtime, we'd be able to fund part-time police officers and put more police on the street. And we'll fund it through the overtime that we're saving. We don't have to pay benefits, and people will be willing to do that. They're already qualified. And I talked to the police chief. He's in support of it.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett, a reply?
I think it would be pretty difficult to find police officers who are willing to work part-time. And in general, we need to make sure that we have more flexibility in the hours that the police officers work and the time that their shift starts.
Thank you. Next question is from Mr. Gambardella. Residents have expressed concerns about going to shopping areas in town because of reports of rising criminal activity. What do you plan to do to address this problem if elected?
Yeah, I mentioned that briefly in my previous response. Part-time police officers, I'm talking about retired police officers, so people who really want to get back to contribute to the town, they'll have the opportunity to do that, and because they're already receiving their benefits, it wouldn't cost the town nearly as much if we added more police officers to the force. Currently, we have between 86 and 90, depending upon who you ask, police officers. We really should be staffed at around 105, which is really adequate staffing. But if we take the part-time police officers to do routine work and free up the other permanent officers to patrol the town, to be more visible, especially in shopping areas where people, again, are saying that they don't feel safe shopping in Hamden. How are we going to attract businesses to Hamden if they don't feel safe shopping here? So we have to provide an opportunity for people to feel comfortable, safe, secure. Schools are another issue. You saw recently there was an incident at the high school where there was a gun discovered. And there was an officer in the school that helped de-escalate that situation. And I think it's imperative that parents feel safe when sending their kids to school, and that's something that we need to do. Safety and security is by far one of the greatest responsibilities of any administration, and that's what I intend to do.
Ms. Garrett, your reply?
So crime and economic development are related, but not in the way that you're suggesting. When we have a thriving economy, good paying jobs, opportunities for people, affordable housing, that's when crime comes down. And we're already seeing crime come down. A lot of the crime has been pandemic related, and it is trending down. So I think that what we need to do is, like I said earlier, get the police officers out of their car more frequently and circle through our through our shopping centers and get out and walk and talk to people. And we really need to encourage people to shop in Hamden. These are our Hamden businesses, and we need to support them, and fear-mongering is not helping economic development or our shopping centers in town.
Thank you. Mr. Gambardella, any further reply?
Yes. Criminals are opportunists. If they see that there's a reduction in police presence, then they're going to take the opportunities to enhance their positions in the town. If you're weak on crime, it encourages more crime, not less crime. Look at the statistics. Look at anywhere across the country where they're weak on crime, there is more crime, period.
Thank you. Next question starts off with a response from Ms. Garrett. The Hamden Police Department is down as many as 20 officers. What would be your plan to attract more police officers to work in our community? While you have been out campaigning, what insights and challenges did you hear from the community about our police force?
So yes, we are down officers. We are contractually obligated to have around 105 officers. through a concessions agreement that was agreed to by the council. So we need to hire more officers. The reason we are down officers is because the job posting, the employment opportunity was not posted to the Connecticut Police Officer Standards and Training website. That has inhibited us to actually create a job list for civil service to go through. So we have just appointed a new member to civil service, and I'm sure that there will be some police officers hired very soon. I will oversee the hiring of police officers in my administration, and this will fulfill our contractual obligation. I've heard a lot about crime on the campaign trail, mostly in Southern Hamden, where people are worried about the crime right next to them on their street. And I want them to know that I care about it, and I want to make them feel safe. Everybody in Hamden deserves to feel safe. And policing, over-policing, does not provide more safety. What provides safety is reducing crime in the first place through economic development, opportunities, and job creation.
Mr. Gambardella.
These are not my words. My opponent has stated that she believes Hamden police are racist, biased, and support white capitalists. Let me tell you, with words like these, do you anticipate more police officers wanting to work in an administration that views her police in that light? The answer to that is no. Do you think that having fewer police on the street, it decreases crime? The answer to that is no. My suggestion is that any administration needs to support the people who are putting their lives on the line for the safety and security of the residents of Hamden, and I will absolutely, positively do that.
Thank you. The next question begins with a response from Mr.
Get a rebuttal, don't I? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. You
No
do,
problem.
Ms. Garrett.
So Ron, I would ask you to not misquote me. I can very much respond for myself. I did not say those exact words, not at all. And my words were in response to the Police Accountability Bill. I never named Hamden police officers, but we do have a lot of racism surrounding policing. Connecticut actually has done very well during the pandemic. We've seen national trends rise way more than in Connecticut.
Again, I apologize that, Ms. Garrett, for cutting off your reply. Mr. Gambardella, you start off with this response. There is some concern that the shopping mall is a thing of the past. Other communities are reimagining their malls. Milford, for instance, is considering major zoning changes that would change the Connecticut Post Mall into a mixed-use building. Should Hamden be doing the same with our retail?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to looking at the zoning requirements in the mall area. I think if it helps build a base, I absolutely support it. I think we have to grow our grand list, and in doing so, that will relieve the taxpayers of some of the extraordinary burden they're currently faced with, so that if the zoning law is done responsibly and done with the okay of the residents of Hamden, which is, I'm all about pushing government out to the people, giving them a voice. If you go to a legislative council session and you approach the microphone, you get 3 minutes with no dialogue, no response. It's not going to be that way in my administration. I'm going to give opportunities for people to address the mayor directly, either in monthly meetings or twice a month, whatever is required. Also on controversial issues such as the cannabis issue, or you're looking at production versus distribution. I'm going to have a committee of 10 people, 5 in favor, 5 opposed. They'll sit in a room, hash it out, and then make a suggestion and recommendation to the mayor. I am not a dictator. I'm doing the will of the people. I'm giving the people a voice in Hamden. So if this is what they want, this is what we'll do. We're going to give them an opportunity to present their ideas, and they'll have a responsive mayor, somebody who's present and accounted for and willing to address their concerns. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett.
So we do have a lot of zoning changes that we may need to make in Hamden through the POCD, there are a lot of zoning suggestions. So we have a lot of different zoning, R zones, T zones, M zones that are mixed around throughout Hamden. There's not a lot of consistency. So I think that reevaluating and giving some consistency to our zoning will definitely help us and help businesses so that they can come through in a streamlined process. I think that mixed use buildings and economic development are very helpful. Having some more apartments above retail and restaurants really makes for a nice community and invigorates the entire neighborhood. So I'm very interested in the mixed use zoning regulations.
Mr. Gambardella?
I believe responsible rezoning is a good thing to do, but I would be reticent if I was getting a proposal to put put dense housing, low-cost housing anywhere in town. I think that has to be really looked at. People purchase their homes for certain reasons, and that reason may be they like distances between themselves and the next residential property. I'm not opposed to any idea, but I want reasonable approach to rezoning.
Ms. Garrett, next question is for you to lead off with your response. What can be done regarding blighted residential and commercial properties in town? And what can be done to encourage quicker town action with regard to those properties?
So a couple of things, actually. We have money for anti-blight efforts through the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant. This money is not being spent in full year after year. So we can take some of this money and really make our town look more beautiful. But in order to do these things, we've got to go through planning and zoning. And I think that our planning and zoning department has too much work for the amount of staff that they have. And in many of our departments, we need to take a look at right-sizing our departments. This doesn't always mean cuts. Sometimes it means that we need to put more people in place to do the work so that we can work for the town and work for economic development and get more businesses to come to Hamden. If we have departments that are not able to process all of the work, then they need more people. We can't expect one person to do the job for three.
Thank you. Mr. Gambardella?
The question was regarding blighted properties, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So there's many reasons for blighted properties. A lot of times, the owner of the property is deceased. It's going through probate. No one is clearly responsible for it. And meanwhile, grass is overgrown, property is deteriorating, and it definitely affects property values in the surrounding area. So what's to do? One thing and one idea I have is to use our public works group department to actually go ahead and do what's necessary to bring the property into reasonable shape, and then charge the estate or the homeowner for the services if they refuse to do the service. Of course, fines are another way to go, but I'd rather get an immediate resolution, and that might be one way to do it. Charge for the services that we render to bring the property into a respectable place.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett?
Our Public Works Department has done those types of things before. We need to make sure that they're working in conjunction with our legal team, and you have to go through the lawyers first because you need to place a lien on the home to return those revenue dollars.
Thank you. Next question begins with a response from Mr. Gambardella. According to a study in the New Haven Register conducted by Data Haven, in Hamden, twice as many African Americans as whites are diabetic and are much more likely to suffer from hypertension. What can or should the town do to assist the community facing these challenges?
Yeah, there's two things we can do. One is, of course, would be for education and literature to support the education regarding proper diets. exercise, that sort of thing. You know, it's typical suggestions have been around a long, long time, but it's nice to refresh it and to make sure that it's getting to the folks who desperately need the information. The other thing, and it's interesting because I went on my campaign trail, I ran into Cornell Scott representatives, and they're interested in wanting to bring to Hamden a facility, which I highly encourage, and I think it's a great thing to do, but I was encouraging them to consider a place in Southern Hamden where I think some of those services could be utilized at a greater level. And because of that, they responded and said, well, they're not sure there might be space available. And I think part of what I can do as mayor is to see whether or not we can make arrangements to provide that space. You know, Southern Hamden has been ignored for a long, long time in terms of economic development. One of the things I'd like to do is build an animal shelter there right near Putnam Avenue, near the pedestrian bridge, just to show that there is a commitment, that the people in Southern Hamden are in fact part of Hamden, and we encourage them to join us in helping develop that area. So that's some of the things I have in mind.
Ms. Garrett?
So I actually agree with Ron here. We do need medical facilities in Southern Hamden. I'm a little disappointed that you're bringing up animals when we're talking about taking care of people in Southern Hamden. They're not related. But we also need a grocery store in Southern Hamden so that we can get quality, fresh foods for people. This is all about diet. So if we are going to encourage people to eat healthy foods, we have to make sure those healthy foods are available. We can also open up things like the Olin Powder Farm so that people have great open outdoor spaces to get exercise. So making sure that we're giving opportunities to care for Southern Hamden's health and putting good things in their bodies.
Thank you. Mr. Gambardella?
Yeah, so Southern Hamden, the purpose of my discussion of the animal shelter is to show a commitment to Southern Hamden. That's the reason why I brought it up, not for the reasons that my opponent has just stated. So I just wanted to get that clear for the record. The powder farm is contaminated brown property, and it's definitely something that we need to look at. Maybe the best thing to do is get into partnerships between private and public in order to see how we could resolve that area. We're going to be talking a little bit more about private-public partnerships later on in the debate.
All right, Ms. Garrett, next question leads off with a response from you. 2 areas of Hamden seem to be capable of significant growth. Dixwell Avenue from the New Haven line to the Wilbercross Parkway, and State Street from the New Haven line to the North Haven line. What actions or initiatives would your administration take that could encourage development along those 2 corridors?
So I have a background in engineering, and what better than an engineer to lead our infrastructure efforts? So economic development needs to be supported by first taking care of our infrastructure. We need updated roads, sidewalks, bike paths. We need to make sure that we are developing our town so that we can walk, drive, bicycle, and these areas need to be supported with our dollars. We need to invest in economic development and infrastructure, and we can do this in some really great ways through the American Recovery Act. We're getting money from that, and we need to invest it wisely so we get a return on those dollars. We also have the infrastructure bill that's being pushed through Congress. I talked to Rosa DeLauro last week, and she assures me it's going to happen. And this is an opportunity for Hamden to really push forward a vision of a more thriving community with great small businesses, retail, restaurants. It's always great to have light manufacturing because those are some really good paying jobs. And we need to bring people into Hamden with our cultural brilliance and our diversity and make people see what we have in Hamden. Hamden's open for business.
Okay, so to address the issue, again, I have to bring up crime. If people don't feel safe in their areas, then no matter what you do in terms of economic development, it's just going to fail. I'm not opposed to police reform. I don't want anyone to misconstrue what I'm saying about supporting the police. Every department is opened up to reform, and I certainly welcome that, and so does the police chief. I talk to him directly. With regard to beautification of the area, I think that's a key component of making people feel first safe and secure and have a beautiful place to walk. Additionally, what I like to do is offer some incentives so people can improve the facades of their building to make them attractive and hopefully encourage people to utilize the businesses in those areas.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett?
Again, economic development and crime are related. Crime trends down when we improve our economy. So economic development really needs to come first. And having more police presence is wonderful if we can do it in effective ways where we're considering trauma-informed policing and community policing. I'm really excited for what Hamden can be, but we need to make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind.
Thank you. Mr. Gambardella, Quinnipiac University owns considerable property along Whitney Avenue. Although most of those properties are now left vacant, there has been discussion for years about creating a college district that might include retail businesses, restaurants, and so forth in that area near the university. How would you work with the university and the state, understanding that Whitney Avenue is a state road, to further develop this area?
I love the concept of developing a walkable community in that area. I think the university would also embrace that concept as well. So we would work together in planning and designing and creating the opportunities that exist there. Also, Quinnipiac has done some things recently that make them a more welcome member of the community. I think Quinnipiac they're great for Hamden, except they're shopping in North Haven now. We have to encourage them to come back to Hamden, and we're going to be able to do that. But more specifically, their housing students, especially in grades from freshman to junior, in their own facilities, and then more responsible students are in the neighborhoods that people have been so long complaining about. And this is showing some positive results. As I walk around in the areas where the college students do reside, the residents generally say that things have been improving. They're not where they want them to be, but they are definitely improving. So the college is listening to us. They are responding in a responsible manner. And I think that by creating neighborhoods, that will also attract students to Hamden and hopefully spend their money in Hamden. So I'm in favor. It's a great opportunity for Hamden. We're going to take full advantage of it.
Ms. Garrett?
I really like the Quinnipiac University master plan for development along Whitney Avenue. I'm very excited about it. We really do need a walkable area there, and it will slow down traffic and really give more of a community feel and a college feel, which I think is really great and vibrant for a town like Hamden. I'd also like to see more culture brought into all of this. So the other aspect here is infrastructure. Again, we need to make sure that we're putting the infrastructure in place for fiber, sewers, north of where the Quinnipiac turnoff is at Mount Carmel. This all really needs to come together, and working with our state delegation will make this happen. So I have a great relationship with our state delegation, and we need to work together because this is a state road.
Mr. Gambardella?
Quinnipiac is part of Hamden. They want what's best for the university. I want what's best for Hamden. I think we can meet on common ground and certainly get some great things done. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, regionalization is a concept that is often talked about, but with few results. What would you do to encourage regional cooperation to share and thereby lower costs for services? And what services would you be open to sharing with your neighboring towns?
So I think we need to work together with CCM and SCROG. So that's really great organizations that represent municipalities and our region. And One of the aspects I think will be a very big challenge for us, and is already, is for trash disposal. We need a facility where we can put our garbage. Most of it is being shipped out of state right now, and so all of the municipalities in the state of Connecticut are really struggling with this problem. So by encouraging the state and different municipalities in our region to work together on this issue, I think that can help us to reduce some very significant costs. We spend over $1 million a year on tipping fees, so this isn't a small dollar amount. There are a lot of other ways that we can regionalize dispatch calls for 911. We see problems with this already because most people use a cell phone. So when cell phone numbers route to 911, they don't always know what town you're in. So by regionalizing some of these services, we can provide better services and save money.
Thank you, Mr. Gambardella.
Yeah, coincidentally enough, I just read a white paper on regionalization, and the verdict is in. Most municipalities and local governments, they avoid regionalization because they are afraid of losing control of various departments. It's understandable, and I appreciate that. But there's one area they actually supported, and that's where we work together, say New Haven, North Haven, and Hamden, and even beyond, where we pull our purchasing power resources. So we all need police vehicles, for example. Well, we could standardize the police vehicles, and instead of ordering 5 or 6, we order 10, 20, or 30, maybe purchasing them directly from the factory. That'll save considerable sum of money, supplies, and on and on and on it goes. Hamden uses a lot of products from various companies, and if we pull our resources, we may be able to get a substantial break on the cost.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett?
No, thank you.
Next question for Mr. Gambardella. No matter which candidate wins in November, your administration will mark a significant change in town leadership. The last 2 mayors had been, both had been chief administrative officers of the previous mayor. So we've had 16 years of consistent governance. What would you do to create community between your administration and the previous administrations and with future administrations? What actions of the current mayor will you continue? Which ones will you discontinue?
You want me to answer that in 90 seconds? I could say this. One of the things I want to bring to the table is open government. There's something that's very clear to me that people, and this is a repeating issue, people just don't feel as though their voices are being heard. I mentioned this previously, but it's important to say it again. Because their voices aren't being heard, they're getting very frustrated, extremely frustrated, and it's showing now throughout the country and specifically in Hamden. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invite the public to govern with me. I think that's something that's different than any other previous administration had done. And what I mean by that is on thorny issues, say critical race theory for picking an issue that's thorny. You know, you have people on both sides of the aisle having a strong opinion on that particular issue. I have a neutral opinion on it. You know, I need to be convinced that this is right or wrong. And so who's better to do that than parents and interested stakeholders? Bring them together, not in a disorganized, crazy fashion, but in an organized way where they can debate the issue calmly, matter-of-factly, and then make a recommendation to the mayor. That's how I intend to do this. Same thing with cannabis, and same thing with many other issues that the town faced. You did not elect a dictator. I want to do and express the will of the people. One way to do that is bringing people together to discuss the issues. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett?
Thank you. So I'm a little worried that would devolve into the Ron Gambardella cage match. But I think that what we need to do is talk about transition, like the question asked. So I've already been meeting with community leaders and department heads around town to discuss the important issues that we need to keep our eye on. and what we agree on, the different aspects of changing over from one administration to another. It's complex and correct. We have a whole new administration coming in because of our victory in the primary and a really exciting team on row A. So I'm excited to tap into the diversity of the slate on row A. We've got a lot of different professional experience and lived experience, and I'm excited to use their help.
Mr. Gambardella.
Not sure what you meant by cage match, but I'll let it go. What I would like to say is that I have a high regard for the residents of Hamden. I trust their opinions. I actually enjoy discussing people with opposing views. Bringing them in together is one way of uniting Hamden, and I'll have a little bit more to talk about that later.
Thank you. We now have gotten some questions from our viewing audience, so let me see if I can pose them as they were intended. The first response now comes from Ms. Garrett, and it is in response to this question. What is your position regarding climate change? Hoax or an existential crisis? What should be done to mitigate the crisis if you believe there is one?
So climate change is real. It is an existential crisis. And what it's going to take is for municipalities, people, all forms of government to work together to mitigate climate change. So in my personal experience, I've put solar panels on my house. I've switched over my heat and air conditioning to electric. I have an electric car. And all of these things are powered by the solar panels. I'm reducing my carbon footprint. That's what we need to do in Hamden. We need more solar panels on buildings. We need to have a high mile per gallon fleet for our cars and switch to electric. There are a lot of different manufacturers out there, and we need to make sure that our transportation is green and that the walkability of our streets and biking is encouraged to get the cars off the road and our buildings more efficient through the solar panels and different heating and cooling efficiency equipment.
Mr. Gambardella.
When I was a kid, I remember there wasn't a leaf on the tree come Halloween. Now it seems like the leaves don't fall off the tree until late November. There's some evidence that climate change is real and it's happening. Now, how do we respond to it? That's more what the question is designed to get to. And one thing that we do, we have plenty of public buildings with large roofs, such as school buildings. This would be an excellent place to put solar panels. Wind energy, I certainly support that, and where it makes sense economically to do so, I will encourage the development of wind and solar and any other alternative sources of energy just to reduce our energy costs, which would make sense, and to improve the lives of the people of Hampton.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett.
I'm very happy to have more time here. So we also need to make sure that we have plenty of trees. Trees keep our streets cool and mitigate climate change. And we also need to take a look at our stormwater systems. So we know that storms are getting more powerful, dumping a lot more water on our streets. And I have friends whose basements have flooded. And just streets are totally flooded because the stormwater system is not carrying away water from our streets as fast as we need it to. So infrastructure repairs and trees all need to combat climate change as well.
Thank you. Mr. Gambardella, the question from the floor. Sociologists have established that an increase in policing does not result in a decrease in crime, and what does reduce crime is investment in communities. What is your response?
I have no issue with investing in communities. I think that's a smart way to go. It's the question of how we get these things done. If you believe that fewer police officers is the solution to higher crime, then I respectfully disagree with that conclusion. I simply believe that by having a higher police presence, and not a presence where it's intrusive to people. I mean, that's what people think when I say that. It's not what I mean. In fact, if we had to put more officers, SRO officers in schools, maybe they dress like teachers. They don't look like police officers or anything that would cause people to feel unsafe because they're there. I want the opposite to happen. I want people to feel safer, not unsafe. I want people to feel comfortable, not uncomfortable. So we have to figure out a way to allow people to feel comfortable and safe without making it feel as though it's a police state. And that's absolutely, I am opposed to anything that even comes close to that. So the sociologists, they may be onto something in terms of investing into the communities. Who could argue with that? So we can do both, right? We can invest in communities and make sure while we're doing that, that the community is safe.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett.
Thank you for that question. That's exactly what I've been saying this morning. Yes, investing in our people, in economic development, in jobs, in mental health, in opportunities, that is what decreases crime. Police respond to crime. Our police chief will tell you that. Nobody's suggesting we have fewer police officers on the road. I recognize that we are down about 20 police officers right now and need to hire more because it's costing us quite a bit in overtime expenses. In regards to our schools, I read an article in the New Haven Independent, and these students that were interviewed were begging for mental health supports. They're not asking for more SROs, they want mental health supports. When our students are telling us this, we need to listen.
Mr. Gambardella.
The left in particular has demonized police officers, and it has been demoralizing. I mean, they look to the mayor for leadership and guidance. And my discussions with the police chief, he is attuned to the demands of the community. He is working diligently to try to work with the community to make them feel that the police are working for them, that the community don't work for the police. It's not opposite. They are doing some good things, especially in youth development. They are working with youth and trying to encourage them to participate in maybe considering police officer as a career.
Thank you. Our last question from the floor or the audience, virtual or not, it's for Ms. Garrett. Affordable housing is often a controversial subject in Hamden. Is Hamden suffering from a lack of affordable housing, or is it a problem only with some neighborhoods in town?
Thank you. Affordable housing is a great way for us to desegregate our town. We have segregated schools right now because our town is itself segregated. And in order to desegregate our schools, we have to change our attendance zones. It's a very difficult process to go through. And what would be really helpful is if we had more affordable housing opportunities in our mostly white neighborhoods so that we could bring in more diversity within our neighborhoods. I think affordable housing is incredibly necessary. Connecticut is a very expensive place to live, not just because of our property taxes that do so many good things in taking care of our roads and our schools and our police officers and firefighters, but we also have very expensive utilities, and expensive food. Everything is very expensive here. So it's important that we create affordable opportunities for people. We can do this through mixed-use housing. We can do this with more affordable housing developments in our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mr. Gambardella.
Careful planning needs to be considered when you think about affordable housing, especially where my opponent is suggesting that affordable housing can occur anywhere in Hamden. I don't know that that's a good plan. I think it would meet up with a lot of resistance. It's not because it's a racial thing. It is not. People bought their homes, black and white and brown, bought their homes for a specific reason. They were attracted to a neighborhood because it was stable and it had characteristics that they valued. But we could bring affordable housing anywhere in Southern Hamden. Is absolutely okay if the people want it. If they don't want it, then I need to consider that as well. And it's not just for minorities. White people can move into Southern Hamden, which is what I would encourage if the housing accommodates that.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett?
Yes, so what I'm hearing from you is that you think that people who need affordable housing options don't deserve to live in certain communities. And I think that we need to make sure that we keep our values in this discussion and consider values when voting for the people who lead this town.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful and kind responses. We now have reached the part in our program where each candidate is going to make a 2-minute closing statement. We start with Mr. Gambardella, your 2-minute close, sir.
Yeah. When you view the residents of Hamden as systemically racist, which my opponent clearly does, then everything is racist. You have a low opinion of the people you're trying to govern, and you tend to put in rules and regulations to appear as a totalitarian state. I'm opposed to that. I don't see systemic racism in Hamden. I see that there's issues in Hamden, certainly, and there's ways to work together as a community. I'm into uniting the community, not with divisive language, accusing everyone, one another, as being a racist. That's not how you do it. What you do is you hold festivals, for example. This is a simple example, but a festival where you invite the community, black, white, brown, together to discuss the issues. You encourage dialogue. You encourage meetings. I, as the mayor, will encourage, as part of the town, invite people in to talk to each other. One of the things we do is we don't talk to each other. We talk at each other. We're pretty good at that, but we don't talk to each other. Resentment feels the same whether you're black or white or brown. Resentment, anger, pain, all these feelings, emotions, concerns, they're the same. It doesn't matter what your color is. What it matters is that we all feel the same, and we all need to come together as a community, because a community divided against itself, as you know, is doomed to fail and fall. My opinion, if we could encourage the dialogue, bring people together in a respectful manner, give them a voice. I think one of the key, as I said before, people don't feel like they have a voice. I am going to ensure that they do have a voice, that they do come together, that they have a mayor that will listen to their concerns. Absolutely, I believe that people have the right, and they should be in dignity. That is I encourage that in all races, all creeds, all religions. I simply want to have peace and harmony within the state, within the community. Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, your closing statement.
Thank you for this very lively debate. I'm really excited about the slate of candidates that we have on row A. We have a lot of diversity and people who genuinely just really care about the community that they're going to represent. And representation is very important, because if we're talking about all of Hamden, that includes every single neighborhood, every single race. And I haven't been calling people racist. So if you're feeling attacked, that might say more about you than it does about me. You've talked a lot about transparency today, but one of the things that's failed in our town is the charter that provided more transparency. And a lot of your slate mates have voted against the charter. So that's something that my administration will be bringing up very quickly. We have a beautiful community in Hamden, and it needs encouragement, it needs support, investment, and we can thrive when we are looking at the people of Hamden and valuing our diversity. It's our strength. And unfortunately, what I'm hearing is that you're not supporting the diversity of this town. So we have a lot of challenges. Our finances are really in a bad state right now. And what businesses want to see when they come to Hamden is stabilization. We can provide that with a 5-year plan. We can get our taxes under control. And we need to do that while we protect people.
Thank you. And with that, that concludes our program for this morning. I want to congratulate the candidates and their very thoughtful responses to these questions, and also to thank them for coming here this morning so that the people in Hamden can meet you that haven't met you so far, but can hear your views on the questions that the Chamber of Commerce thinks is important. And again, thank you very, very much for your time, and good luck to both of you. And to everyone out there viewing, thank you too for joining us and participating in our debate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulate both.